Welcome to this lunch webinar, or WIMinar as we tend to call it when Women in Mining Sweden host such an event as today. We invite you to listen to this interesting talk on diversity and inclusion in the mining industry. We have some well-known role models ready for you in just a while. And this is not a regular presentation. There will be no slides. In fact, you don't have to watch this at all. Just listen. So I do encourage you to get up from your chair, plug in your earphones, put the phone in your pocket, and go for a walk. While you are getting ready, I'd like to say a few words. Sweden surely has been a frontrunner in the field of women's rights. Today, we have generous parental leaves, we have affordable childcare, we have more women enrolling at universities than men. And this year, 2021, will celebrate 100 years since the first national election where both men and women were allowed to vote. Now, we take all these things for granted here. But unfortunately, I wouldn't go as far as saying we are done here in Sweden. Women still earn less than men, sometimes much less, and that goes for all areas. The industry and manufacturing sectors are still very male-dominated, even here. And while the rest of the Nordic countries at this very moment all have female prime minister, here in Sweden, a woman has never held that most powerful position. In other words, a lot still remains to be done. But we all know these structural patterns don't change overnight just by turning the searchlight on the diversity and inclusion issue. The right decisions need to be made by the right people. And programs and projects, they need to be initiated and results need to be implemented in organizations. And results need to be followed up upon. There is plenty of documentation of and research done on how more gender-balanced projects and project groups are more creative, how colleagues thrive at work in mixed groups, and how more diversified companies make more money. Here in Sweden, some 20% of the workforce in the Swedish mining industry is women. And the Swedish mining companies are working every day to improve that statistics. What we are struggling with in our everyday life, at work or at home, may differ. But just knowing there are sisters out there in the global mining community will give us strength, and this will keep us going. Going until equal pay, respect, and gender-balanced representation is something we all can take for granted. Well, now we're ready to listen to this conversation held back in November last year between four highly distinguished individuals, namely Helena Hedblom, the CEO of Epiroc, Johan Packendorf, professor at the Royal Institute of Technology, Marie Nilsson, the union president of Workers' Union IF Metall, and Tor Bengtsson of Silén, vice president human resources at SSA Special Steels. Enjoy. How well do you recognize the work that is being carried out within the Epiroc? From your steel producing SSAB?
I think we're all sisters today, right? I recognize very much what you said. I recognize the strategy, the logic, how we actually do it. And maybe I could just say one thing that we try to add based on the business challenge is that I also like to include the customer perspective. Around the corner, I see it's very likely, working with many, many small customers around the globe, that the successor line for the family-owned companies will shift. It will not happen over a day, we know that, but it's likely to happen based on the fact that we see, not in all regions, but in some regions, in some countries, we see female outperform their male peers when it comes to studies, when it comes to, as said earlier also, when it comes to cost efficiency, when it comes to safety, things like that. I think that will echo into the customer line, so to say, and that maybe what I like to add. But all in all, I recognize very much what you said, and I think this is what we need to do, and I think we have known that for quite some time. I think now it's, if not yet happened, it's time to make the work done. And that is what I try to do with my teams, what I try to work together with the SSAB management team to do. And all in all, I would say we're not yet there. I'm happy to say that not too many of the voters on the broadcast say that this is not a question because it's solved, because it's not. But I think we have been partly successful, and we need to keep on the journey, so to say.
Mm. So did you get any inspiration from the Epiroc story or the Epiroc journey?
I think we do very much like, but yes, for sure. I think I like very much how structured you seem to work when it comes from the board all the way to the management, and you seem to keep the same more or less templates for everything. We have tried, and I think we managed to some extent, but I think we can improve in that as well, because I think the success is so much built in when you manage to not make it, as Johan said, as a project. This will have to be built into the business. Mm-hmm. And if you can show that long term, then you will be successful. Then you will see it will actually lead something. And you will see it in the money. You will not see it on the scorecards, and this is the level of female or male. You will see it will be money, bottom line. Mm.
Thank you very much, Tor. I'd like to move on to Marie Nilsson of the IF Metall. You just finished the collective agreement negotiations. How present are the gender issues during your talks and negotiations?
Yeah, of course, it's very important issues in our collective bargaining round. So in this year's collective bargaining round, we have the priority of increase low wages. It was important to reach more fair and equal wages because in Sweden we still have, if you look at the labor market as an overall level, you could see that women are have the lowest wages in the female-dominated workplaces. So it's a major gender equality problem that must be addressed and solved. So that was one of our demands that we fortunately get in place. So one more thing we also demand was to establish an action plan with measures to ensure that those on parental leave should not suffer negative effects. So when you come back from parental leave, you should not get any bad influence about that.
Mm. Okay, thank you. Interesting. And I know that IF Metall, the workers' union that you represent, is labeling itself as a feminist union, although 80% of your members are men. Please explain.
Yeah, because we see that the unequal situation in the society is based on that you look at women and men in different ways, and we see that that is a reality and we want to change it. That's why we call us a feminist trade union. And it also reflects that we have put up some goals that, as you said, our trade union is have around 20% female members, but we have put up a goal that at least 30% in our decision-making bodies from top level down to the organization should have at least 30% women. And actually we have on overall level we have reached that. And the higher you come in the organization, the more we have reached the goal. So it's a hard work, and we have had it for several years now. But I'm very happy that we, in some levels, have reached it.
Labeling these workers' union as a feminist union, how has this been received? I mean, on the floor, in the mines, in the steel plants?
I think it's quite good received. Everybody see this, and in workplaces, for example, the mining and steel industry, there's not so many women. The men look positive in get more women at the workplaces because they see that developing the work environment in a better way. So I said that, of course, someone is not so satisfied and feel your position threat. But on the average, everybody is happy with that and feel some proudness also that we're working through these goals.
I'm curious about how you see the role of IF Metall. Should you be the driving force for a change in a company?
Yeah, absolutely. We should be that, because it's about creating a good work environment for our members, and also look after that both men and women should feel welcome and safe at the workplace. So we absolutely would like to be a driving force for a positive change there.
And I turn to you, representing the companies, Helena and Tor. Do you agree? Do you fully agree on these matters, or do you sort of?
I don't think it's a conflict, to be honest. I think we can work together, and we do. And I think, based on the fact that IF Metall is Swedish union, I think I have a great understanding from what you say that it's not a conflict for your members. I don't see it as a conflict for our employees, same persons. And I don't think this should be an area of conflict between the union and the companies. This battle has to be won together, jointly, and we can come from different perspectives. We can have different ways to land different victories on different levels in the organization. So I think the tone is equally important from the union side as from senior managers, as you have the natural benefit, Helena, from being female and running a industrial company in just this specific. I would say it's equally important for me with Martin Lindqvist as CEO, knowing that he's backing these questions, always done and always will. So I don't see it as a conflict. We should work jointly on this. Because, as I said, around the corner will be a matter of business success, and that's why I don't see the conflict.
Do you agree, Helena?
Absolutely, and long term we need to defend our position, with Sweden industrial companies, global companies that is taking us so far already. But in the future we need to defend this together, and I strongly believe that, as I said, diversity is one of the key success factors here. So I think we need to make sure that we win together. I don't see it as a conflict at all.
And I have another question for you, Marie. Being a woman representing, like we've been mentioning several times, a very male-dominated workforce is, just like Helena Hedblom here at Epiroc, where you mentioned, we were talking about the not uncomplicated situation of being a woman profiled on gender issues. What are your thoughts on that?
Sometimes I get really tired about the questions that how do you feel being the first female president of a male-dominated trade union organization? But at the same time, of course, I understand that I am an important role model for other women in the male-dominated industry. So I understand that, but I don't feel that. I need to earn trust as a president for WIMinar because I'm a woman. I think and I feel that confidence is based on what I do and how I exercise my leadership, not about my sex. So of course I have met some gender injustice on the way to this role. For example, when I started in the trade union way back, it was taken for granted that I would take on the role as a secretary in several boards because I was a woman. So that they thought was natural that I take the notes. But
You?
no, but I had to really point out and really underline myself that I have both a desire and the competence to become a negotiator. So.
Interesting. Thank you, Marie. I'll turn to our professor here on the screen. Marie mentioned the fact of being a role model. How important would you say role models are for creating a real change?
Well, I think role models are important, but also actions. So in the sense that it's of course it's really good if someone from a sort of a minority group is suddenly be seen as sort of a top leader or whatever, but also it's to build culture is very important also what they do and what they do together with others. So role models, very good, but also then the creation of good examples of good local projects, good local initiatives, things like that also to build up that. So nothing wrong with role models, but they can't do the whole job themselves.
Thank you. Another thing about that Helena mentioned is about the fact that you've launched mentoring programs. And Professor Packendorf, how important and what role can these mentoring programs play also in order to create a real change?
Well, they can they can have a very important role, given that you think of them, that you carefully about what they're supposed to be about. Quite often we see sort of a bit sloppy mentoring programs, if I'm going to put it like that. That it's mainly about sort of supporting younger people in their ambitions and what they would like to know. But mentor programs are also a way to convey the important values of the company, and also these young persons who receive sort of the mentorship, they will become the management in the future. It's our future leaders that we're developing here. So working with the values and these things in the mentorship relation, what kind new values of leadership and new values related to gender diversity and things like that. That is extremely important. But you really have to think about what you want with the mentorship program and how and what people should be involved in order to give the best possible long-term effect.
And who should participate in these mentoring programs? Who should be the mentees? Should it be young women or young men?
Yeah, both, because the more that we see that also when we have mentorship programs in the university world, the more young men who see this as a natural issue to embrace in their sort of emerging leadership, the better it is. Of course, it's good for everybody.
So do we have any questions from the audience to our speakers?
We got one really good one here to Johan Packendorf. And do you think that the culture in a company changes automatically when there are more women employed?
It can do, but it can do in a sense, because then there is some research indicating that if you sort of go over a certain threshold, a certain proportion of women, say about 30-40%, then something happens in that sense. Women are not seen as exceptions or as a minority anymore. They become sort of, well, regular employees together with everybody else. So that, in a sense, is a positive thing. But then again, nothing happens automatically, because culture, you always have a culture of some kind, but preferably you want certain values, you want your business and your organization to develop in certain directions, and then you will have to work with it. So you either have the culture you want, or you will have something else, and then you will have to act, of course.
Thank you. Maja, do we have another question?
We have a lot of questions, but can I just do another one?
Sure,
right
yeah,
now?
please.
Yeah, and this one is for Helena Hedblom at Epiroc. How can the change from support to operation become reality? You were talking about that. Leadership experience require technical or mechanical experience, and how do we bridge that?
Yeah, so that is very often a common comment, but I would like to challenge that, to be honest. We have many cases in the company where we have taken very strong women from finance roles into leading business, be it in customer centers or leading a larger part of the organization. So I think that if you look on how men usually do their career steps, they very often change departments or function, and I think that is what we try to encourage women in the organization, to actually be bold enough to also apply for positions outside their maybe expertise, or where they have their experience and maybe education as well. So we have good examples, movements from HR to operations, also from finance to operations, also from Czech to operations. So I think it is possible, but I think you need to support the women also to dare to take those steps, and that is a big portion of this mentorship program that we are running, that we try to guide, and we need to try to support the women to dare to apply for positions outside their comfort zone.
Marie, do you agree that you need to sort of push the women to take that next step?
Yeah, that's actually is my experience as well. If you ask a woman to take a position, also in the trade union, she really wants to know what it's all about. How could I be sure that I are able to manage this? She wants to know exactly what it's about. But generally when you ask a man, it's no problem, I take it on, even if I don't, not as expert in the area.
It's like a cliche, but obviously it's true.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Professor Packendorf?
Yes, I do. It tend to be like that, and again, it's very much about how sort of men and women, or masculinity and femininity, are constructed. So it's part of the culture, and luckily, it's something that we can actually also change. But it tends to go through also in other. I've seen when we studied, for example, leadership development programs. Quite often, male participants are seen as having an unlimited potential. They can go all the way to the CEO and the board, while female candidates are often sort of seen as, well, she can take the next step, and then we'll see. So that goes through all of these sort of aspects on careers and recruitment, and also that we have different expectations on men and women, and that is something that we need to move away from through conscious cultural work.
Thank you. Do you have another question?
Yes, I have
Please,
so
Maja.
many questions, but I'll do the next one for Tor, SSAB. So can you point at any specific change that you're actually seeing in your company, say, the last year?
Specific case, yeah, we had a few areas up for discussion as role models. Will they be able to do everything on their own? Of course not. But what I've seen over maybe not the last year, but if we reach 5 years back in time, I've been working in leading the gender diversity questions for some 10-ish years within the group. And what I can see, based on competence, looking at the structure of SSAB with typically very large sites for production and 5 years ago, we had not yet had a female manager or a site manager. Today, we have female site managers in Sweden, in Luleå, Borlänge, and Oxelösund. And back to what you said earlier, Helena, was this some kind of gender diversity experiment? No, not at all. It was truly based on competence, and I'm very happy to see the business success they provide. And I think that what they do as role models when they dare to take on, and the organization, the managers above them, sees that they have the potential, and when they success, I think that gives a echo well needed across the full organization. So that I've seen, maybe not during the last year, but 3 years, 4 years back in time. So.
Well, thank you, Johan Packendorf. You also mentioned the importance of having the site managers on board to create facts on the ground.
Yes, absolutely, because it's quite often sort of the central management of an organization might come up with all kind of good ideas, and often that is sort of where sort of gender equality initiatives, they tend to be sort of formulated at central level. But the challenge is, of course, then to make sure it sort of spreads out. And the cultures in organizations, they are not homogeneous. They can be quite differentiated. Different sites in a large industrial company, different sites can have very different cultures locally. So again, it's very important that the site managers sort of are bearers of the values, of the sort of the common values that we want in the company, and don't sort of around their own culture business in a sense.
Thank you. I'm curious about, as you've all been mentioning, the gender or the diversity issue has been very present in all your work for many years. I guess you bumped into a few walls along the way. I'm curious about, do you have any examples of mistakes or failures in this area where where your intentions were good, but it did not come out as intended? And the next question is, of course, what did you learn from that? So do you have any examples of something you tore?
Yeah, I guess if we can admit, if we dare to admit, I guess we all could say. And I from the top of my head, I recall we gathered senior managers around the globe to discuss general business things, but we had one area for the discussion was how we should continue to secure and succeed with our gender diversity plans and increase or make sure that we have a gender equality progress. And we had a rather positive atmosphere in the room when we discussed and shared typically best practice from how to hire blue-collar temps that will be the pipeline to permanent employees at our mills, how we recruit into R&D, how we challenge the managers to take the next step and so on. So it was a rather positive atmosphere in the room. And suddenly one of the site managers raised his hand and say, I don't see the problem. I just don't, because we don't have any females in my organization. I need to more or less face the wall and say, are you serious? Is it true? And he claimed it was, yeah, we had to think about that. And I started, of course, to think myself, and after the session as well. And I think that is a rather big mistake we can do as leaders, and to take for granted that we are on the same level of knowledge, that we can see the problem from the same view, that we can share that. And I think it's really important that you can see the problem, you can identify it to make progress. And he was, because it was a he couldn't really understand it, because he didn't see the context at all. He just didn't understand the question. I think that was my learning. Make sure that we continue to have the dialogue in the organization, all levels, all time, that we, as you do also in Epiroc, follow up, management team meetings. What's the status for now? So we just don't drop the question. So we just continue the dialogue and the discussion. I think that's my learning.
Not in a project form, we
Definitely
learned.
not in a project form. Of course, I think we can benefit from having some firecrackers or sparks along the road. As we finalized yesterday evening, we had a national female leading engineer program, and it was a virtual gala in the evening, and I think that is typically a very good firecracker along the road. Every year we run this together with other companies, and it gives a good echo, because our managers, female and men managers, get to meet these wonderful, very high-performing senior students or young professionals. I think that gives a very good energy into the organization. And the other way around as well, when the youngsters provide good insights to the organization. So not a project.
What do you say, Marie? Do you have any failures and learnings that you want to share?
Yeah, actually, I have put up one, but since I listen here to you, I just remember another one as well. When we create these networks with women in different levels in our trade union, sometimes we think that, oh, everybody likes this, come to a network with just women and share our experience and so. But actually, often when we gather this bunch of women they are used to work with a male-dominated workplace. They are not so comfortable to get in a group with just women, because they don't look at themselves as weak and put out for pressures. They pretty strong women, and they could think sometimes that, oh, are you going to gather us? We are not weak, we are strong. But in the end, they find out often that it's really good to have these networks to speak alone in. So you should not. Of course, you should not think that all women are in the same model. So. But another experience I have from my work life out in the industry, it is that some health and safety issues are not raised until women have entered a workplace. Only then attention are paid to the fact that some work are too heavy and wear the body. And then when you solve that problem, you actually find out and notice that no longer even men and women suffer from diseases, from repetitive strain injuries and heavy workers. So you could say that you could see clearly that health and safety issues are not gender issues. It is human issues. So you have this kind of, I think, especially in the mining sector, maybe you have this macho culture that this work should be a bit of heavy, and it's not until women enter the workplace you find out equipment that make the work much easier and don't wear your body.
Thank you, Marie. Important. Do you have something you want to share, Helena, from your experience?
Yeah, but I think in general, I think larger corporations, I think we have a tendency to focus on the numbers, and we become reactive instead of proactive. And I think during many years, we were reporting, we had fantastic transparency of the data in each and every entity, and then we were sitting there and, okay, now we're not moving. Okay, our next quarter we are not moving, there's no progress. Instead of turning it around and focus not on the numbers, but focus actually on the actions we're doing in each and every site now to actually move this in the right direction. For me, that's a big learning. I think we need to move into actions. It must be tangible actions and then you need to focus to follow up on those actions. That's how you say deliver results in all other areas in a company. And I think that mentality needs to be also when it comes to gender balance.
So even for a president and a CEO, you cannot only look into numbers.
Exactly. Actions behind creates the numbers.
So what does our professor say about this? Do you have even a story that you want to share when you sort of were guided by your misconceptions?
Well, misconceptions, but I think it's a bit related to, what should I say? Quite often, I think it's easy to assume that just because you send out some kind of a message, or as Helene said, sending out some kind of targets or key performance indicators, whatever, you assume that everybody understands them. It relates to a bit also what Tor was speaking about, that you assume that your message had gone through. And quite often in big organizations, its messages tend to be distorted in many steps before they reach the one who want to reach. And they can be misunderstood, and they can be filtered through a number of different managers and everything. So that would be sort of a general thing, that quite often that you assume that you are very good at communicating because you're so committed to this and you want a lot of good things with this, but the message doesn't really go through, and it's misunderstood, or it's sort of distorted along the way, so to speak. So I think that happens quite a lot.
Thank you, Johan. Maja, do we have another question from the audience?
Yes, we do. Like I said, a lot of questions coming in. And actually, the discussion in the panel is creating quite a lot of reactions. And I want to pick out this one question, and it's actually for all of you. I hear you put a lot of a great responsibility on women to change and to dare. What about the responsibility of men? And it's not for a specific...
What is responsibility for men to carry these questions forward? Helena?
I can start. So for me, this is very, it is about leadership in the end. Of course, also in our organization, majority of the leaders are men. So to work with a healthy leadership and to develop, let's say, strong, brave leaders, if it's men or women, it doesn't matter. But in my view, the leadership needs to be there so that you dare to actually put together a diverse team. I talk a lot about diversity, together with gender, because for me it's the same type of fear as a leader that results in an unbalanced gender work group or an unbalanced, a team with only Swedes and not, bringing in different nationalities or cultures, or, So for me, it's very much. That's how we work with the men in the organization, strengthening the leadership capabilities of the men managers we have in the organization.
Mm. I mean, talking about diversity issues, I mean, just look at us here today. We're all middle-aged, white, well-educated people. Who are we to what do we know about real exclusion, really? Mm.
Yeah, I think it's a risk, as touched upon from you, Helena, and earlier also, that we typically, I think we had due to I couldn't really see the scoreboard in the beginning, how many females or male attending this show or this program, but I have recognized myself being the only male in many of these discussions over the years, and that is, as coming back to what you said also earlier, that you when you gather union representatives and you see, now where is my context? I normally work with men. Where are the men? And I think we must be aware of that risk, that we secure a atmosphere and conditions where we can act as professional as possible. And coming back to, it's then the male responsibility to not only, but today we discussed mainly gender diversity, so let's stay on that. I think it is it's much more pressure on the males to make it happen, because we started as coming from the steel industry with with the majority of males in all positions. And still, we have a male CEO, nothing wrong with that, but I think it's responsibility within the senior management to make sure that it happens. And it's not to make sure that we get the figures right, it's about the business. I think even though we have, as I said earlier, many areas in regions where we can see the female students outperform the males, I think we will have to have a balance, because I think that will be a funny workplace. It's nothing more complicated than that. It needs to be a diverse team, not only gender, but also age, history and background. And because I think it's truly good for business. It shouldn't be that more complicated than that. And I think that goes back to our male managers, as long as there are many.
Truly business. Let those words be the last words from our panel. So thank you very much, Tor Bengtsson från SSAB, Marie Nilsson, IF Metall, Helena Hedblom, Epiroc, and Johan Packendorf from the Royal Institute of Technology. So thank you very much. Thank you all for listening in today. I hope you had a nice walk wherever you are. Sweden surely has been a frontrunner in the field of women's rights. But unfortunately, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're not done yet. The importance of role models, such as 4 individuals we just listened to, cannot be underestimated. Hopefully, our conversation today gave you some new insights and inspiration. Stay tuned at the Women in Mining Sweden Facebook page and Twitter account. Thank you and goodbye.